All right, I think it's time. Good evening, everybody. Good to see everyone here. I'm Alex Bishop, your moderator for the evening. My thanks to the Pinchot chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby, as well as our co-host, the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of York. Citizens Climate Lobby is a nonprofit, nonpartisan group seeking solutions to climate change with chapters across the United States, an affiliate in Canada, and chapters worldwide. We hope you'll stop by our table in the lobby and sign up to join our community. 2024 was the hottest year on record, and the last 10 years were the warmest 10 years ever recorded. We're seeing more and costlier natural disasters. Property insurance costs are rising, and soaring gasoline prices remind us of the risk of our continued dependency on fossil fuels. For tonight's event, we have each candidate that met the petition filing requirement for the upcoming primary election, as well as our independent candidate. No statement has been given to us as of right now by Janelle Stelson or Scott Perry. Janelle did inform us that she did have a prior obligation, so she could not attend tonight. We're pleased to welcome the candidates in attendance tonight, and we thank them for their participation. And tonight is about learning and not really about arguing. So just keep that in mind as the audience. We want to keep this respectful at all times, and we're here to understand the candidates' perspectives, first and foremost. So with that, each candidate will have up to 5 minutes to answer our first question and up to 2 minutes for subsequent questions. We will signal when time is up, but allow candidates to complete the sentence. If time permits, we'll take questions from the audience. And with that in mind, please raise your hand and someone will come around and collect a note card with your question if you have any. So with that being said, our first candidate will be Karen Dalton.
You know, there's not that much difference between when I stand and when I sit. I'm only 5'1". So, do I really need this? Okay. So everybody can hear me? Okay. So is there there's a question? Oh, introduce myself. Oh, so introduce myself? Okay. I'm sorry.
What do you enjoy about living in South Central Pennsylvania? And why did you decide on Congress?
Okay. So I first came to Central Pennsylvania to go to law school in 1990. And I lived in New Jersey before then, and I did come for the first time in 1986 in order to run Jim Greenwood's state Senate campaign. Jim was a Republican from the rational side, where I sit, with the Main Street side, the mainstream side, the we want to help people side. And so I was his campaign director in 1986. I went back to New Jersey, and then I came back here in order to go to law school. This will answer the question. When I first came to look at the Dickinson School of Law, it was when I had my deposit in my pocket because I had been on the waiting list. I'd been accepted at Syracuse, and that's where I thought I was going to go, except I couldn't afford to pay the down payment to live with 3 other students. And then my life changed. I got the letter in the mail saying, you get to go to the Dickinson School of Law. I hopped in my friend's van, and as soon as we saw Carlisle, he turned to me and said, you may never want to leave. And that's exactly what happened. So what do I enjoy about living here? Everything. Every time I go back to see my family in New Jersey, I kind of feel like a foreigner. It's a different kind of thing when you cross over and it says, the Garden State welcomes you. I mean, Bruce Springsteen's still there, and that's a good thing, but what's going on is right here. And why am I running for Congress? They usually say 3 strikes and you're out. In my case, it's 3 strikes and you're in. Strike 1, January 6th. So I remember, as we all do, where I was when I found out that there was an insurrection at the Capitol. And I couldn't go to sleep that night. So I stayed up and I watched the proceedings in Congress. Early in the morning at about 3 a.m., Scott Perry stood on the floor of the House of Representatives mere hours after the blood of police officers was spilled and said, don't count the votes of Pennsylvania. 6.7 million votes, wipe them out. And he signed on to a lawsuit filed by the state of Texas saying, don't count our votes, as well as 3 other states. And then all the other things he did leading up to that, including saying that Italian spy satellites had flipped votes from Donald Trump to Joe Biden. I know it's pretty funny. This is the first time I've ever been able to say that without breaking out into laughter, and I'm not kidding about that. And the folks that ran the Justice Department at the time said that that was an insane idea, told him that. So that was strike 1. Strike 2 is Donald Trump's elected in 2024, and the first day of that administration, he starts issuing unconstitutional executive order after unconstitutional executive order. So I went to the Dickinson School of Law and I learned all about executive orders. They're only lawful if they're hooked to the Constitution or to a power given to the president through statute by Congress. And this birthright citizenship and almost everything to an order after that has been unconstitutional. So those went to court, of course. And then Speaker Johnson mused, maybe we should get rid of the federal judiciary. Well, I was watching that at home, and steam started to come out of my ears. That was strike 2. Strike 3 was when Donald Trump went after our cultural institutions and our institutions of heritage. So one of my personal heroes is Dr. Pauli Murray. And they actually cut off the grants to the Pauli Murray Center. So that was strike 3. So I got together my 2 coin jars and my tax refund, and I filled out the paperwork with the FEC, and I decided to give it a go. And that's why I decided to run for Congress.
Thank you very much. Next up. Yep.
Oh, me? Oh, awesome. Yay. Hi, I'm Isabelle Harman. I am the independent running for Pennsylvania's 10th Congressional District. Before I start, I feel compelled to do this, so please allow me to honor the ancestral land of the Susquehannock and the Lapani, and Lenape, and all the others who are represented in the state of Pennsylvania. So I chose, actually, my husband and I, who's over here, we chose to come back to Carlisle. We were here for the War College from 2011 to 2012. Then we are an Army family, and we had a choice between going up to West Point for our last duty station or coming here. And my husband graduated from Carlisle High School. When I came here the first time, I really like it. It reminds me a lot of my hometown, which is in the suburbs of St. Louis County. And I found my place. So I call this my adopted home. I've been here since 2019, and I am extremely happy with all of the experiences I have had so far. I have not met a mean person. I think that's part of the culture in Pennsylvania. People are very nice, everyone I've met. So we stayed. We retired in 2021, bought our house. I said it was our final house. He's a little nervous because now I'm like, maybe not. Maybe we need to look for something else, but we'll see. It's a very beautiful house and we have fantastic neighbors. Why I'm running for Congress? Thank you for everything that you laid out. Because I'm not the exact same reasons at all, but there are absolutely valid reasons for why the 3 of us should be sitting at this table right now for your consideration. I chose to run because the first Trump administration, for me, had a visceral effect. I felt like I was going back to my hometown in St. Louis County, Bridgeton, Missouri, and experiencing everything my family experienced all over again. Everything was coming out in the open. I grew up in a working class neighborhood in the suburbs of St. Louis County. And I was surrounded by people who did not want my family there. And I felt that this was coming up again. So, got him out, thought we were going to move forward, then he was reelected. And I remember a friend asking me, She said, "Do you really think he's going to be reelected again?" I said, "Yes, he's coming back." It's unfortunate that I was correct. So 2024, he's reelected, and I said, that's it. We can't allow our country to continue to bring up everything that we have fought against. We need to move our country forward, and we need to find shared solutions to do that. Conversation will be impactful as long as we're willing to step into somebody else's shoes at some point and to actually listen. I have some friends who founded Someone to Tell It To in Harrisburg, and they have taught me the art and the science of listening. I try to practice it every day. And I also try to be very respectful and hear what other people are expressing, but I also try to find their solutions so that we can move forward. So I am running for Congress. I'm asking for you to be your representative. I'm new to the state of Pennsylvania, and I know roots run deep here, but this is my chosen hometown. And I hope that tonight, all three of us will give you the options that you deserve, not to be told who you're going to vote for. We are all valid options. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Douglas. I first just want to start by thanking Karen and Isabelle for being here. And I also want to thank the organizers for inviting everybody. I know I've sat in many town halls where they might just invite the Democratic candidates, or where I'm sitting there alone often. And so I appreciate, I want the audience to just know how hard it is to run for Congress, and how challenging it is. And I really respect these two women. I've followed them online, been at a few events with them, and they're doing great work to elevate issues that are super important to Pennsylvania's 10th district. And it's an honor to be on stage with them today, answering questions to you. Look, I think Pennsylvania's 10th district is just like the crown jewel of Pennsylvania. We have the capital city, we have rural, urban, suburban space. I've lived in all of those contexts in my life. I lived in Northern Virginia in suburban space. I lived in downtown Boston. I grew up on a farm in Indiana. I've lived in Dauphin County longer than I've lived anywhere in my life because my family moved around a lot, and after college I moved around a lot. My wife and I have laid down roots here. Our kids are growing up here, and we love it here. And that's part of what led me to serve as a county commissioner, because I love this community. I want to continue to serve it and continue to invest in it. So if you don't know me, I spent 20 years as a pastor. In 2023, I decided to run for county commissioner in Dauphin County, a county that had been firmly red, Republican, since the Civil War. Flipped a seat on the county commissioner's seat for the first time since then. On the night of the election, we were ahead by 42 votes, won by 184. We were outspent 20-1. We just ran a very grassroots campaign connected to the people. And I ran on prison reform. And I remember a consultant that I was driving back on a train with from an event in Philly telling me, "Justin, you cannot run on prison reform." And I'm like, well, we're not just running on it. We're only doing one billboard ad because that's all the money we have, and we're elevating an issue at the prison that we're running on. And they're like, that's the dumbest decision any elected official or person desiring to be an elected official could do. People don't care about prisoners. And I said, well, we are double the national average of deaths in our prison in Dauphin County, and that has to be addressed. And I ran on principle. And once I got elected, I delivered on that principle. We've raised the county minimum wage to $16 an hour. That's because I was there advocating for it. We went from 2 ballot drop boxes in the county to 7. We did not have ballot curing. We now have ballot curing in Dauphin County, which just means if you mail in your ballot, you get something wrong, you get the opportunity to fix it. We ended a contract with our medical provider at the jail, instituted a new vendor that's come in and done a lot better. We also abolished over $65 million in debt from a punitive pay-to-stay plan, which basically was if you're incarcerated, you're paying a daily rate to be incarcerated. And then when you go re-enter society, guess what? You have thousands of dollars in debt. For decades, that had built up to $65 million in debt across all the people who used to be incarcerated at Dauphin County Prison. We're investing millions of dollars in reentry while we're leaving people burdened with this reality that makes their reentry so hard. We got rid of that. These are things I'm proud of as a county commissioner. I've also rooted out corruption and worked toward transparency. But why am I running? Because there's still a lot to do in Dauphin County, to be honest. There's still a lot that I want to accomplish. I'm running because in May of last year, I saw my neighbors start to be taken by ICE. I'm very connected to the Bhutanese Nepali community. They branch out across PA-10 and beyond, even into Lancaster. And these are refugees who came here from a country in Bhutan that attempted to ethnically cleanse them and kill them and drove them out of the country into Nepal. Many of them spent decades in the refugee camps in Nepal. And then under George W. Bush, there was an agreement with multiple countries to take these individuals on as refugees. Obama expanded that. And we have this beautiful community of people who are incredibly just resilient and also dedicated to this community. And to see people with valid green cards get picked up, immediately have their green cards revoked and be deported back to a country that ethnically cleansed them, and then to be on the phone with the senator's office, to be on the phone literally with the UN while their flights are landing, trying to monitor the situation so I can report back to their families, and feeling helpless as a county commissioner to influence this process that means so much to me, because these individuals, and you're sitting with spouses and kids and talking to them. I worked to try to help them get to a county jail so they could visit their families for the last time when they were being prepped for deportation. You see the humanity, and you say, I have to do something about this. And so that got me activated to run for this seat. And I come here heavy-hearted tonight because on my way in, I was on the phone with my executive assistant at the county, and we just got notice that this morning, 2 individuals in our community were picked up from the Bhutanese Nepali community, both valid green card holders, picked up this morning by ICE. This isn't stopping, and it's completely unconstitutional and wrong, and we need to do better, and I'll tell more later maybe.
Thank you very much. The next question is, how would you address healthcare costs? Would you support expanding federal healthcare subsidies? And how would you ensure that citizens wouldn't lose coverage or face premium spikes?
No, these are 2-minute answers, correct?
2-minute. 2-minute answers.
Okay. I also want to thank the folks that are here. Forgive my manners. Of the folks that are here with us, Ms. Harman, Mr. Douglas, and you all folks for holding this, and for every person that's here. I see a lot of folks that I know, which is just so wonderful, and I'm meeting all kinds of new people, and that's great too. So, healthcare. I believe healthcare is a human right. It's also a human need. And one of the things that I fault Scott Perry for, and we don't have enough time. We could be here till 10 o'clock, and I would not be finished with the things that I would fault Scott Perry for. But with the minute and 30 seconds I have, I'll talk about healthcare. Scott Perry voted for the big, brutal betrayal of the American Dream Act. He calls it the Big, Beautiful Bill Act. And it's big, and it's big, but it's not beautiful if you're not rich. Bless you. One of the things it did was to cut health insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, and the enhanced subsidies under the ACA. So I think that the Republicans in Congress believe that they're going to get away with it because those cuts don't take effect until after the general election in November. They don't take effect till early 2026. But I would, if get your permission to represent you in Congress, would do everything in my power to repeal the big, brutal betrayal of the American Dream Act. And I just, for the record, have to make a course correction. I did not get enough signatures to get on the ballot. I am now mounting a write-in campaign. So the way that I look at this race is this. Mr. Perry only won with 1%, by 1%. And if I can cut into that during the primary and turn it over to one of these good folks here, or maybe to Janelle Stelson, and they can finish the job, then Scott Perry can be in early retirement just like me. And that's what I'm hoping to do, at least on the Republican side, to get as many write-in votes and then to turn it over. Next.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Dalton. Please call me Isabel. So this is a tough, as Karen has pointed out, this is a tough question to answer when there's so many things changing at the federal level that our heads are spinning every day. What I think I would like to say is one of the things that we have to start looking at, and I'm approaching this post-Trump, even maybe post-fall election, is that we have to start planning for the future, because we don't know what's going to happen over the course of the rest of this season, and we don't know what's going to happen for the month and a half or so after the fall election, depending on what the outcome is. So what we need to do is we need to start focusing on what your needs are locally, and then work from the local level through the spectrum of our government so that we can start to affect change here in the state. Then we can take that and we can create a plan for whichever one of us you choose to send to Congress, because it's your plan to be able to bring that to the federal government and provide change and enact change. So I know you're looking for specifics here, so let me give you a couple. One, we need to reopen our hospitals and clinics, not only in the urban areas, but also in the rural areas. I was just in northern Dauphin yesterday, and they have to drive 45 minutes in any direction to get services that they absolutely need, and there is no urgent care up there. The second thing that we need to do is we need to start looking at reducing the cost for students to go to medical school so that we can attract more doctors, so that we can attract more nurses and nurse practitioners and physician's assistants. Okay, I'm good. I hope that's enough.
So the leading cause of bankruptcy in America is medical debt. So let's start there. If we want to give Americans economic freedom, buying power on the marketplace, giving them quality health care at an affordable rate, a universal health care system would be something that would do that. Right now, our health care exists under profit motive. That's just the reality. The reality is you get health care, someone makes money off of it. You get denied coverage, it's because they're not going to make money off of it, right? And you see skyrocketing premiums because they're making sure their shareholders get money. If we continue to operate with a profit motive system, we're going to continue to see inflation at a rate that makes no sense and certainly won't track with minimum wage, because we haven't seen inflation track with minimum wage for decades, my lifetime. So we have to be bold in our reforms. The ACA is great, but it was still a Band-Aid fix to a real problem. The ACA credits, I certainly support that, but that still is not going to solve the problem. We need bold reforms in the area of healthcare, and Medicare for All or a system like it, lowering the caps, opening the risk pool, or lowering the risk pool because you're going to have younger individuals in it. If you lower those caps down, you open up a system to where in a decade or 2 decades, an infant is getting a Medicare card right when they're walking out of the hospital. That kind of a system is working in other countries. There's no reason it can't work here. The only reason it can't work here is we've created so many middlemen and so many corporations that pay your politicians through their PACs. My opponent in the Democratic primary has received corporate PAC money from someone who's traded on the stock market that is medical. So they give money to legislators with the intent purpose of ensuring that the legislation that's written will be beneficial to them when they get into that seat. We have to understand that's the way this is rigged. We don't have a failing healthcare system as a bug of the system. It is a feature. It is a feature to fail you, to make sure they deliver for their shareholders.
Thank you very much. All right. Is climate change an important concern for you? And if so, what measures would you support to address it?
I do believe that climate change is real. I have that on my website, votekd4c.com. One of the things I would do, and I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in this area, I'm not. I also have to admit that I was reading this afternoon about cap and trade, just because, in case it came up. I do believe climate change is real, but I didn't get into this race based upon climate change. I got into it to try to save our country. Okay, so back to the environment. It troubles me greatly that the endangerment finding has been repealed by the Trump administration. That has been a major weapon in the war against climate change. I know also that Governor Shapiro pulled us out of the regional, I'm just going to call it cap and trade because that's pretty much what it is. And he says he's got some other program he's going to institute in its place. I don't know what's going to happen with that. And again, this reminds me of when I took the bar exam. I didn't fudge on the bar exam when I didn't know a lot about riparian water rights, and I'm not going to fudge now, so that I'm going to end my answer there. There you go.
Okay. So I definitely believe that climate change is real. I mean, it's evident every year. I went back to my hometown. I used to be able to go sledding down my own hill in my backyard every winter, the whole time I grew up there. Zero now, close to zero in terms of a child being able to go outside and just sled or run around or make a snowman. That's the best example I can give you. I am an avid gardener, so I am constantly watching the weather. Last year in our neighborhood, well, everybody should probably knows this, we had some freak storm come through, really, really heavy rain that came through. No one could explain. All of our neighbors who had lived there 30 plus years or so said, this is not normal. We have never seen this before. It was very scary. We've survived a hurricane in Miami when we were stationed there. These are real issues that we have, and everybody knows it's predicted that Miami's going to get swallowed up because it's already below sea level. So we can't fool ourselves to think that this is not happening, and our scientists are the experts, and we need to listen to them. The other aspect of this that I want to bring up, though, is agriculture. Our farmers know that things are changing, and they're trying to adapt to this change, but they are also trying to fight for what we need to address climate change. A couple of things that have come up: data centers, taking up the land. So not only can they not farm that land, and they're selling it because many are in debt, but it turns out to be land that is valuable. So we can't plant trees there either to help with the climate. And warehousing. And then finally, something I just learned, wind farms. Of course, we know about solar also. So these are things that we have to really talk about as a whole when it comes to addressing climate change. Thank you.
Well, I'll start with just a simple yes. The climate is an issue, and it's an issue we need to ensure that we're giving adequate attention to. I think this is an opportunity for innovation and investment, and I think Biden saw this as an opportunity for that. Unfortunately, much of that didn't get rolled out before this president, put the kibosh on a lot of the solar and wind options that were going to really diversify the grid. But I did get to see a project that got through right here in PA-10 in my county. Steelton School District implemented a solar farm that powers their buses that are all electric. All of their buses at Steelton are electric. And those buses hold that energy, and if the school were to go without power, they can power the school for a certain amount of time with the buses. This is the kind of innovation that when you invest in it, you're helping your community, you're helping your schools, you're creating innovation right in the backyard of a school of kids to inspire them to talk about this reality right in front of them in a growing industry that hopefully might inspire them to be part of that, right? I don't think this is, so much I think of the oil industry as kind of this capitalistic, corporations that are kind of bullies in a lot of ways. There's this great new industry that can thrive if we open the doors for it and we innovate in this direction, creating jobs and creating, I think, the opportunities to protect nature. And right here in PA-10, we have so much beautiful nature that we don't want to see just go away because of climate change, because of a lack of protections. In Dauphin County, I've been proud to support multiple ag land preservation awards, which is basically where we ensure that farmland remains farmland. Still, agriculture is one of the biggest industries in Dauphin County, but unfortunately, much of those industries are being subsidized by the government because it's really challenging to make it as a farmer. I grew up on a farm. I know how challenging that is. And so we have to be protecting our environment, making it harder on our farmers. As Isabelle said, that is a real challenge, the climate. And ultimately, I think an investment in public transportation is important too. I think of this region, regional rail, but we won't get into that.
I know. Thank you very much. The next question is, how would you ensure the long-term solvency of Social Security and Medicare without cutting benefits?
Social Security. Disclaimer, I collect Social Security. And I've seen polls that say that young workers don't think they're ever going to collect it. And when I worked at the Pennsylvania House of Representatives for over 25 years, I didn't think I was going to collect it either, but I did. So that is a concern for me, selfishly, but a concern for other generations as well. Right now, the tax system is set up to benefit the folks that have the most. It's not set up to benefit you and me and the folks that have to slog through their daily lives and work for a living and pay student loans and pay a mortgage. And one of the things that's quite unfair about the tax system is that when you reach $400,000 in income, you do not have to pay a nickel more in Social Security tax. And so what I would do is I would take that cap off and raise the rate from 3.8% to 5%. The other thing I would do to help our seniors out in the realm of Social Security is I would make the current tax deduction a tax credit. And there's a big difference. Right now, under the system that Donald Trump touts as no tax on Social Security, which is a lie, by the way, there is tax on Social Security. The folks at the very bottom don't get a nickel of that $6,000 tax deduction. But if it becomes a tax credit, then the folks that are at the bottom will be able to get money back. It'll work like the child tax credit, where the folks at the bottom that are struggling will actually see money coming back to them. I would do that. The other thing I would do is I would make the pharmaceutical benefit real. Well, I was working in the House of Pennsylvania House of Representatives when I found out about the donut hole. How many people here know what a donut hole is in the pharmaceutical and Medicare Part D? That's got to go. The only donut hole should be at Dunkin' Donuts. And so those are the things that I would do. Oh, I'm right on it. Woohoo!
Nice job. It's so fun to be up here. We're doing a great job. Okay, I'm going to be just flat out honest with you. This is not a topic area that I'm comfortable with right now. Mainly because we're doing research, our team is doing research on Social Security. And part of the reason why I asked that this research is done is because I think Social Security has been misrepresented. I believe that, if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm okay with it, Social Security was never intended to be your retirement. It was intended to be a supplement to retirement. So I think we need to go back and we need to completely reconsider how we are providing that safety net. So I'm not prepared to answer that tonight, because it's a serious problem with our aging population and our younger population who feel that they are going to be burdened with trying to put enough money into the Social Security system so that they can help those of us who are aging. That's all I'm going to say tonight, because I really want to do more research on this, because I think that this is something that needs to be completely revamped.
So I want to piggyback off something that Karen said, the caps, just to get really clear on that. I thought the number was 180. You think it's 400? Is it? It might be 400, but I don't know. My numbers say it's 180. That basically, if you're, I think it might be even 185, but if you're making, let's just say you're making $185,000, okay? Yes. Oh, okay. All right. Well, and prove me wrong, but whether it's 400 or whether it's 180, it doesn't matter, because I'm going to explain to you why it doesn't matter. Because basically, here's the deal. If you are a multimillionaire making all of this revenue, you only pay into Social Security up to that cap. You pay the same amount on that money, and then all the other earnings you have do not pay into Social Security. It was someone's bright idea to create a cap at 180, 185 is where I believe it is. It is correct? Okay. So that being the case, I just want to be very clear. What's threatening Social Security is the consolidation of wealth. The more and more the rich have gotten richer, especially over the last 2 decades, and this particular president is, it is a mandate on him to make the rich richer, the more we're going to see Social Security threatened, because the less you're going to have in the pool of people who are actually paying, as long as that cap exists. The cap needs to be lifted, full stop. If you make $1 billion in a year, you're paying $1 billion in Social Security tax, like not $1 billion in Social Security tax, but you're paying on all that income your Social Security. There should not be a cap, because these individuals got wealthy off a capitalistic system that you participate in, that you provide to. This is the problem. Everybody in a garage who acts like they came up with some great idea, and they did, and they put hard work in, and they maybe even leveraged everything to make it work. The problem is they also benefited from a system and a structure that helped them succeed. And they need to pay back into that system and that structure that helped them get ahead. They need to invest in the American dream for the people who are coming behind them, not push it down or buy off politicians who create a crazy idea like a cap. That's the kind of thing that I think just average, everyday Americans are getting screwed on.
The next question, how would you deal with rising energy costs?
When I first walked in today, after telling everybody I was sorry that I got stuck in traffic, I went up to Justin and I said, did you hear what Scott Perry said? And now that Isabel's here, did you hear what Scott Perry said at his latest public appearance? And know that he doesn't show up to venues like this, where people that have to work and struggle and make paychecks, week to week and month to month. He doesn't show up to stuff like that. He shows up where folks are doing better and where they think the way that Donald Trump and he think. So he showed up at the conservative PAC, I forget the exact name of it, and he said that the rising cost of energy, and I've heard him do this on his telephone town halls, that where the disembodied voice appears through your telephone, you don't get to look at him eye to eye, and there's no picture of him either on the phone. He has said that rising energy costs come from wind and solar. And I am here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that is an absolute falsehood. I go back to my legal education. I'm so proud to be a graduate of the Dickinson School of Law. And one of the things, if we were sitting in any class there, we would say, well, what's your authority for that? And I would love to ask him, what's your authority for that, Mr. Perry? And I would bet you he doesn't have one that's legitimate. So from what I have read, the rising cost of energy is coming from the frenzy, and that's what the Wall Street Journal calls it, the frenzy of building out data centers. If you go to my website, votekd4c.com, you will see that I have proposed legislation, again, if I'm given permission to represent you in Congress, that I will introduce in order to regulate data centers. One of the things that the independent monitor, the folks that are the independent monitor for the electric grid, PJM, has said is that folks should not shoulder the cost of the data centers in terms of electricity, and that there's not enough supply right now in the power grid. And in fact, oh, sorry, gotcha. Here.
We're all good. All right. Okay. So I went to I went to a conference, and we had people who are experts in this area speak with us. And one of the things that they talked to us about was the multiple ways that we can address our energy needs. And the year before last, I took a trip with my husband and I took a trip with our grandson throughout the United States. We did a 3-week road trip. And I can tell you that in every state, there are solar farms and there are wind farms and there is petroleum. So there's no reason why we can't do all of this. Now, one of the things that I know is a concern is fracking. And now we've got these data centers that we have to deal with. But to me, that's a close-in issue that we have to contend with while we're here today. But if we're going to make a real difference, we need to find a way to use multiple ways of addressing our energy needs. We've got electric cars. I'll tell you honestly, I'm not a big fan of electric cars. I like cars where I can have the option, because I've lived through a hurricane. And I'm not going to have electricity. I can't power my car. So I like options. So I think that we need to really start talking about solar, wind, and our other options for energy, and how to use all of them. And it's not going to be the same thing, the same type of addressing the same type of energy issues that we have in every state, because we're all different. But we have to start looking forward and considering what our options are, and it's not just one.
So the question is rising energy costs. So obviously data centers have been mentioned. I could talk about that. But I want to talk about a war of choice that this president led us into. Because every day I drive home, I drive past a Love's, truck stop, and a Rutter's on the highway on my drive home. And like every day, it's a nickel more, it seems like, for gas. When we talk about rising costs, we have to be mindful of the reality of a president whom I'm confident didn't even know what the Strait of Hormuz was before he got in this war, right? I mean, we knew that this was a reality that could happen if you were in any way, aware of the diplomatic issues in the region, that they had this potential to have a chokehold on, 20 to 30% of the global supply of oil, and how that would affect our economy immediately, just because these models are predicted models. They're not like the stock market, and the cost is going up, not because of anything other than the prediction models of the reality that we're soon going to deal with the cascading impacts. You could pull us completely out of Iran right now. They could open the Strait of Hormuz right now. Your gas prices aren't going down, because it's going to take time for that to actually cascade back into the supply. That matters, because when we get into these global conflicts, when we already are struggling for energy independence, so we need to be investing, just like Biden attempted to do, in all of these renewable energies, but we also need to be thinking about the global conflicts, the ways we're creating tariffs that are putting us at odds with allies that are long-standing. What's that going to mean for our energy independence moving forward, when we might have to trade because we're low on supply for something? These are the kinds of things that when we talk about your prices going up, having a madman in the White House and a Congress who refuses to hold him accountable, it is part of lowering your costs, even in energy.
Thank you very much. The next question is, what is your position on federal taxes, especially middle-class tax relief versus deficit reduction?
Okay, I have to put my peepers on for this. If you go to my website, votekd4c.com, you'll see that I do have a tax plan. Now, we do need federal income taxes because, we need healthcare and we need education. But the tax structure, as I mentioned before, has been, I don't want to use the word rigged, but that's the one that comes to mind. It's slighted, it's bent in the, it's meant to work for the rich. Let's just say that. It's meant to work for the rich and the well-connected. So I do believe in cutting taxes for the middle class. Here's what I would do. And again, because I'm 65, almost 66, my memory sometimes goes on the blink, so I'm going to read. This is directly from my website. I would set the corporate minimum tax at 28%. Right now, it's 20% under the big brutal betrayal of the American Dream Act. I would raise the tax rate on U.S. multinationals' foreign earnings to 21% because profitable multinational corporations must pay their fair share. I would not permit companies paying compensation of over $1 million to any single employee to be deducted. I would eliminate the tax subsidies for oil and gas. I would provide a minimum tax of 25% for billionaires. Billionaires must pay their fair share. I would restore the top marginal tax rate of 39.6% to those individuals making above $400,000 or $450,000 for joint filers. I would treat the capital gains for the wealthiest among us the same way as any other income is treated. Capital gains should be taxed at 39.6%. The Medicare tax on earned and unearned income should be raised from 3.8% to 5% for those with incomes over $400,000. Okay, maybe I'll have to go back and make that $185,000. And this is the big one. This one really got me. So hedge fund managers are actually taxed at two different rates. Part of their income is taxed just like mine and yours and cops and firefighters and teachers, and the other is taxed at like 20%. That's called the carried interest loophole. And economists estimate if you close that loophole alone, you'll raise $12 billion over 10 years. And that's got to happen. I would also do some other things, but we'll talk about that later.
Okay. So we all know that there is a split that's happening. We know that the wealthy are getting wealthier and the rest of us are starting to suffer. So what I would like to bring to the conversation is not a lot of different tax levels except for this. I believe we should have a flat tax that everyone should pay and that there should be no loopholes. What that tax can be is progressive, depending on your income. There's got to be a way for us to be able to put more money into the pockets of our citizens and our residents and our immigrants, everybody who is working. Right now, the tax system is not fair. We know that. Karen has just told us everything that we have been aware of. And I applaud you for that, Karen. I'm not as astute, but I do know that the tax system is not serving the people. If we went to a flat tax, then there would be no reason for us to have loopholes. The flat tax would not only affect us, it would also affect corporations and businesses. But it has to be a progressive tax so that people aren't continuing to suffer.
So I'll say what Karen was hesitant to say, which is that the system is rigged. We think along the lines of party lines. We think this is a Republican-Democrat issue, a right-left issue. It's really a top-bottom issue when it comes to economics. And I've already told you about the reality of corporate PAC money in your elections. It's in just about every election you're going to vote in, especially at the federal level. And so that largely influences how tax policy is written. Tax policy is not written by your legislators. It's written by the corporations that put them there. And so it benefits them. So the very first thing I'll say is let's go back to FDR. FDR is dealing with the Great Depression. FDR is dealing with coming out of this season of America where the American dream is limited. We can wait till we get back to that place for bold reforms, or we can do it now. FDR taxed the rich to ensure that we could carve out the most successful middle class we've ever had. Just for example, look where we are right now. I'm 42 years old, and I've never owned a home. The average age in America right now for home buying is 41 years old for your very first home. Do you know what it was when I was growing up in the early 90s? 27 or 28. That is a massive difference in economic freedom for Americans. And that's a direct result of the rich continuing to consolidate. Because what they're consolidating is your homes. We literally have private equity buying homes, trading it on the stock market, answering to shareholders, and driving up the costs of our community for rent. And then on top of it, they're finding every tax loophole to pay back into the system, because they're using that money to then start a way of lobbying to ensure that it's just circular. Elon Musk can say and claim on his taxes that he shouldn't pay anything because he doesn't have anything. Everything's in the stock market. But then when he goes to apply for a loan, he counts all of that as liquid toward his loan, even though it's not. Well, are you going to pay on it or are you not? These are the situations where the rich get ahead, and so we have to do much of what was said in the sense of ensuring that the rich are paying their fair share. And if we don't do that, there's a multitude of policies that we could do. I'm not going to get into the minutia of it, but ultimately it is the rich have to pay their fair share, or we're going to continue to suffer the consequences.
Thank you. The next question is, what actions would you take to protect our elections and ensure the peaceful transfer of power?
Do you mind, before I answer that, if I just go back and drop a footnote about my tax stuff? So I think everybody in this room would agree that the affordability crisis is not a hoax. I know that I've actually had to sometimes go to the grocery store with my credit card. I'm getting into debt just buying food, and it's getting worse the longer this war drags on. And I know I'm lucky that I actually have a credit card, and other folks don't. And with respect to home buying, I just bought my first house 4 years ago. I was 61, and I'm grateful to have it. But I understand everything that you folks are saying, and I agree. So lots of times the president, whoever it is, will say that he can bring costs down. I'm not so sure that that's the case. I think the other way to go about it is to put more money into the hands of people. And again, if you go to my website, votekd4c.com, you will see that I have a platform called Fulfilling America's Promises to Our Families. So this goes hand in hand with the tax policy. So what would I do? I would put more money into the hands of families by making the child tax credit much higher than it is now, and I would let the child stay on it until they're 18, as long as they're in high school. The other thing I would do is I would make child care expenses 100% deductible. Right now, under the big brutal betrayal of the American Dream Act, it's only 50% deductible. The child tax credit was raised under the big brutal betrayal of the American Dream Act, $200 more than under Joe Biden, and I will say his name because Joe Biden was a really good president. I'm a Republican, but I also believe in common sense, and we've had some wonderful Democratic presidents, and we've had some wonderful Republican presidents, and we've had crappy ones on both sides too. So I would make sure that our child tax credit wouldn't throw 2 million families on this year that qualified last year. So I would do that. And I've got to be honest with you, again, my 65-year-old memory is kicking in. What was the question? Oh, guarantee elections. Okay. For starters, Christopher Krebs. Anybody ever hear that name, Christopher Krebs? Show of hands. Okay, sir. He was Donald Trump's cybersecurity expert during the first term. And he said that if I could just finish, please. We had the most secure election in the history of our country. So I believe we already have safe and secure elections, except when Donald Trump starts to meddle in them. And that's what we're facing right now. So how would I ensure the safety of our elections? When I wind up losing on May 19th, I will concede. I won't claim that the election was rigged. I won't claim that Italian spy satellites tried to flip votes. I won't say that it can't all be done. I won't flip over the chessboard and run home.
All right. First and foremost, the state is responsible for our election process, and our state runs a safe and secure election. Mic drop. There's nothing else to say. Our state is responsible for this, and they do a very good job. I've worked at the polls. I know that they are responsible people there. Okay, so no need to go there. The second part of the question, peaceful transfer of power, that's up to the current Congress. That's up to the current Congress to make sure that we have a peaceful transfer of power. Now, one of us will be sworn in by the time that comes about again. But this Congress right now, this Congress has the responsibility to make sure that we bring decency, statesmanship, and a level of an expectation for how they represent our country that has a standard that is much higher than the average citizen, and it's one that I intend to bring to Congress for you. Statesmanship and a standard that should be met by the people who are representing us today in our current Congress. I want to come back to the very quickly, I hope I have enough time. Listen, taxes, tax cuts, all that stuff is fantastic until you have a child who has to either still live at home because they can't afford to live anywhere else, they can't go to work because childcare is too expensive, so they can't have a dual income, which is the expectation today. We need to move in a direction where our economy allows, if the family wants this, one parent to stay home and to have a decent lifestyle. That is not possible today. It's not just about taxes. It's about day-to-day living and day-to-day expenses. We have got to start talking about that. How do we decrease those day-to-day expenses?
So states run elections, but counties are actually the ones that implement them. I'm a county commissioner. We have 67 counties across Pennsylvania. You're 3 county commissioners in each of those counties, unless they have an executive. They're the ones who run your elections. I sit on the election board. Once I decided to run for this office, I recused myself from that for purposes of the potential of a conflict since I'm in this election. But as a county commissioner, I've presided over elections. I've got to know our election department. I've got to see the reality. Look, it is conspiracy what you're hearing people say about elections. And it is conspiracy because they know they're losing power. It's conspiracy because they lost. Look, I coached 4th and 5th grade boys basketball this year, my son's basketball team in a rec league. I had 4th and 5th graders that took losses better than Donald Trump, okay? This is just a petulant child who can't take an L and has to come up with some grievance to try to sell the American people on why he was not the choice for America. And then on top of that, what we're seeing right now with the Save America Act, this legislation that's trying to enforce voter ID, but enforce voter ID in a way that makes absolutely no sense. If any of you have attempted to get a real ID, for example, because remember how that started? We're going to do real ID. The deadline is this date. Then they realized, oh, wow, everybody didn't get it by then. Well, we probably want people to still be able to fly, so let's push out the date 2 more years. And then let's push it out 2 more years again, and 2 more years again. And it just went into effect. And my wife she went 3 times back because of the process and because of the lines and because she's a school teacher in Harrisburg and she has a job, right? And trying to find the time to get there and make it work. We are going to grossly disenfranchise a right that Americans have to vote if we pass that legislation. And primarily disenfranchise women, especially those of which who have been married and have a different last name than what exists on their birth certificate, which seems rather intentional. We have to do better. And I'll also say this, there's also been a lot of talks about ICE polling places. And as a county commissioner, I've dealt with the challenge of, we had a polling place issue where the police needed to show up, and we were very sensitive to the realities of potential voter intimidation with police being on site. The idea that ICE might show up at a polling place to enforce immigration or to do whatever they want. These tactics are things we have to be very sensitive to and ensure that our process for electing our leaders stays with the integrity it has right now.
All right. Should Congress play a role in abortion access and reproductive health, and what legislation would you support or oppose?
Here's my answer. No. What do I mean by that? I believe that healthcare decisions are private. They're between you and your doctor. And so when it comes to healthcare decisions, I would have Congress out of it. I support the right to choose. I support the right to direct your own medical care, whether you be a trans child or a pregnant woman. And just the government, out, out, out. That's my answer.
So I'm pro-life. But I do not believe that anyone's health care should be legislated. It is not your decision to tell me what to do with my body. If I'm approached by somebody who is considering having an abortion, I'm going to listen to that person. I'm going to listen to what they have to say, what they're struggling with, the decision that they have to make. And whatever that decision is, I'm going to support it. But if I can, I'm going to work with the person to help them move in the direction of continuing the pregnancy. That decision is no one else's, except the person who is carrying the child at whatever stage. I cannot judge people who decide what stage they want to terminate a pregnancy. That is not my place. My place is to be there for the person. So whatever decision they make, I'm there to support it. But no one should be trying to legislate health care that are personal decisions. So there's nothing that's on the books now or that I would introduce that would tell you whether or not you can go to the doctor to have a vasectomy, to take something for ED. The same way, I don't expect you to tell me that I can't go to a doctor and discuss what I want to do with the situation I'm in. And the second thing, and the other thing that I think we need to remember is that a child is not conceived by one person. And we need to start remembering that this is not just a woman's issue that we're talking about. This is an issue that involves two people. And how the child is conceived is something we need to start addressing.
So Roe versus Wade was a court case, not legislation. I would move to codify that into law, which just means that Congress would pass legislation protecting someone's access to how they want to interact with their doctor, which I think is just an important clarification here. If we pass and codify Roe versus Wade into law, we're not telling anyone to get an abortion. We're giving them the option and access to it, because in states like Texas right now, you do not have that option to meet with your doctor and to make the decision, even at the potential risk of your own life because of that. Not to mention the criminalization of medicine that's happening under that. If you are a doctor who knows that this procedure is necessary for the life-saving of the mother, or even for the preference of the mother, at that point you are not allowed to provide that care in certain states. Other states are considering legislation similar to that. So codifying Roe v. Wade into law would actually allow for it to be between a doctor and the individual standing with the doctor. And so I support that. I would also say, though, we need a broader conversation about what it means. You know, I was 20 years a pastor, okay? And I would hear people talk pro-life, pro-life, pro-life. And these were some of the most pro-war people. These were some of the most anti-helping and aid that the government would provide, but they really were just anti-abortion. They weren't pro-life. If we want to talk about pro-life, we have to have serious discussions about maternity leave. and what it means to give the opportunity for families to bond with their child, what it means to support childcare, what it means to ensure that someone has access to that kind of thing. You know, my mom stood with me in lines at WIC, which is basically, if you're not familiar with WIC, it's an infant program for children to ensure that they have the nutrition and food that they need. My parents struggled, and in that time of struggle, they had an option for us 5 kids. I was the oldest of. Like, these kinds of options have to be invested in if we're going to talk about what it means to actually be pro-life, because I think there's a way we can create opportunities that limit the need for someone to have that challenging conversation with their doctor, and I'm all for that. We need to ensure that, you know, if young people are waiting till they're 41 to buy a home, they are not experiencing economic and generational freedom. Like the freedom you get from that kind of thing, and that burden creates these situations and barriers, and so I'm 100% for a woman's right to choose.
What are your views on immigration policy and border security?
I am not in favor of anything that Donald Trump is doing with respect to immigration. I believe we need comprehensive immigration reform. The last time we had it was when Ronald Reagan was president, and 3 million folks were able to apply and become citizens. I think we need to start that conversation there. It troubles me to the point of tears that people that were here in this country legally one day are now here illegally the next, because Donald Trump has taken away temporary protected status and green cards, just as Justin was saying, and other methods of being here legally. We're all children of the same God, and even if you're not a believer, we still inhabit this tiny planet, and we need to find a way to make space for everyone. And so I do believe that you need to secure borders in terms of keeping criminals out of the country. I get that. There was a wonderful sermon given by the senior rabbi at Central Synagogue, Angela Brookdahl, in which he talked about that countries have a right to secure their borders, but what we're really talking about is people who come here just looking for safety and for a chance. And I've often asked myself, where would I be and where would my family line be if Donald Trump or somebody like him had been president when my great-grandfather came here from Scotland? Well, if birthright citizenship was in place, the way that John Sauer, the Solicitor General, argued to the Supreme Court last week, there'd be nobody here from my family, because we're talking about people that are born here of, like, say, illegal parents, and then there's no other way for anybody to establish citizenship in that family line except for naturalization. So we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of people never being Americans. And if I could just finish, and that is so antithetical to everything that this country stands for. It's antithetical to the faith that I practice. And I can't say enough things condemning it, and I'll turn this over.
This issue is very personal to me. My mother is an immigrant, but my mother's an immigrant from France. So there are some things that do not apply to someone who is coming from Europe. I have dual citizenship if I choose to. So my mother is now back in France, and there's a possibility that she would not be able to come back into this country because of the erratic behavior of our executive branch, our president, the decisions that he might make. My mother is 95 years old. So the only way that I can see her now is if I go to France to see her. The issue is, with the concept of birthright citizenship, at what point is that going to affect me? I was born in France. I wasn't born in this country. So this is a snowballing effect that we have got to be aware of and we have to start to address. It's not only the people who are who have crossed the southern border or are considered illegal, which is a bunch of BS, that we have to think about. There are more immigrants from other countries here in the United States who can be affected. And that includes me and my siblings. I have 2 siblings who live in Europe, and I have 4 others here. I'm the youngest of 7. We can all be affected by what this administration is currently doing. You may not think so because we are all European, but trust me, it can happen, and we need to address it now.
So I just want to say, some will tell you this is a failure of both sides for comprehensive immigration reform, but I want to remind you, because everything gets so difficult to remember because there's constant stuff flooding your feeds and coming at you, that at the end of Biden's term, there was comprehensive bipartisan legislation on immigration that had multiple Republican sponsors, that was really a way to do dignified immigration enforcement. And then what happened? This president said, I want an issue to run. I want to run and hold at the Republican National Convention. I want people holding mass deportation signs. That's what I want, because I can run on this issue. So don't actually fix the problem, because I want to run on the brokenness and continue to break people when I get into office. And that's what he chose to do. And so it's really important that we recognize that is what the problem is. That we have a president who wants this problem, because fear-mongering and creating an enemy is something that he benefits from. So I just want to say this about ICE. I'm fully abolish ICE. And some of you are like, what? You want to abolish ICE? Yes, I want to abolish ICE. The very first thing we give law enforcement as a tool is not a gun, a badge, a light, any of the other stuff. It's trust. They have violated the trust of the American people over and over and over again. They murdered 2 American citizens in the street before the sun went down that day. This administration assassinated their character with the platform that they had. It's unbelievable. It's completely un-American. What we are doing, what we are accepting as citizens, is just authoritarian at its core. If we do not abolish this department and create something new, that has civilian review boards, that has true accountability to Congress, that has true transparency of their mandate. If we don't do that, we are feeding into the white nationalists that continue to tell us that immigrants are to be feared. I see the thriving community of immigrants here in PA-10. I see their contribution, I see their resilience, and what I see in them is the American spirit that I grew up to celebrate.
I just want to give a quick response. ICE has a role to play. I would not abolish ICE. What we need to do is we need to start reconsidering how we are funding the departments at the federal level and how that funding is being distributed within those departments. Not only that, but we have to consider how they are being trained and that they understand exactly what their mission is. I am not an advocate for abolishing ICE because it's serves a purpose.
I just wanted to add a couple things. First of all, the term illegal alien, I believe, is a misnomer. And the reason why is because under the Immigration and Nationality Act, every person, no matter how they came into this country, has a right to apply for asylum. They have a right to apply for temporary protected status. And somehow that term, unfortunately, has come into our lexicon, and then it's been exploited by Donald Trump. I wish I had said some of the things that Justin said. I didn't address ICE, and I agree with you that there is a role to play with respect to making sure the border is secure so that we don't get the worst of the worst from other nations. But when I worked with the House Judiciary Committee in the Pennsylvania House, I served as 20 years as counsel. That's one of the reasons why I have my own copy of the Constitution. We used to deal with constitutional law issues all the time, on the Commonwealth level, the Pennsylvania Constitution, and on the state level with the federal Constitution. And one of the things we did was, we looked at how municipal police were trained under the Municipal Police Officers Education and Training Act. And I often would have to meet with representatives of municipal police and state police and the FOP. Of all the years I worked there, and of all the meetings I took, I never, ever, ever went to a meeting with a law enforcement officer that was dressed in jeans, or in camouflage, or had a hoodie, or had a mask, had no badge, had no insignia. We always knew who they represented. We always knew that, just like Justin said, there is some sort of civilian control, whether it's the mayor, or in Philadelphia, there's a civilian review board. I think that's a very good idea. But civil rights are being violated, I believe, on a day-to-day basis. Likely to beat Scott Perry in the primary, and I'm going to have to turn it over to one of these good folks, or to Janelle Stelson. But my heart is just broken over the idea of rallying up people or shooting them to death because they protest with a phone. Anyway, thank you.
No more. Come on. All right. All right, we got one more question, and then we'll have some audience questions, so it's going to be real fun then. Okay. Fine. That's a lightning round. How would you address the issue of housing affordability?
Okay, so I mentioned before that I bought my first house 4 years ago. I took every cent that I owned, and I was able to buy a house finally. And it's true what Justin is saying, that the average age of buying a home used to be in the 20s. It's not anymore. I think that home ownership is just part of this affordability thing, which it's not votes that we're faced with. I know that there's bipartisan legislation sponsored by Senator Warren and Senator Tim Scott to address housing and make it easier for folks to buy a home, including limiting corporations from buying homes. Again, I'm going to harken back to what I said before.
I believe that we need to put more money into the hands of families so that they have more money for a down payment. If you go to my website, votekd4c.com, you'll see my platform. One of the ways I would do that is I would institute a program called Make Social Security Work for Us Now. What does that do? It would allow folks that are not the age of collecting Social Security like me to be able to borrow up to 2 years worth of Social Security benefits. That's $40,000. And use it for any family-related need. Pay it back when it comes time for you to retire. Pay a little bit back as you collect Social Security benefits. It'll be deducted from your benefits. You could use it to buy a house, to start a business, to pay down medical debt, to pay for your education. With respect to education, again, if we make college available to everyone who wants to go, then there's no college debt when you come out, and then there's more money to put down on a house. So what would I do? I would implement something called Serve America scholarships, and I would say the government should pay for any and all types of education, community college, graduate school, law school. You talked about how we don't have enough nurses and doctors. Pay for their education, and then the first 10 years of your life, you go into public service or work for the public good. It doesn't even have to be for the government. But in my field, law, there's a great need for representation of kids that are going through the that have been abused through the dependency process. There's a great need on the civil side for people who have been divorced and who can't afford lawyers. If we had this type of program, over time, those shortages would disappear, not only in the law, but in education and in the medical field.
I think the first way that I would approach this is to start to address minimum wage. First of all, we need to raise our minimum wage. Our son-in-law and daughter, who went into active service in the Army, he started out making $40,000 a year. That is not a living wage, believe it or not. You would think it would be. When I went on active duty, I was making $25,000 a year. That was in the early 90s. I thought I was rich. So we need to start talking about wages to be able to talk about affordable housing. Then we're putting our young people, people at any age, on the trajectory to be able to buy one. The second thing we need to talk about is savings. How to manage your finances. We're not talking about these kind of things with our young people. And we're not encouraging it once they go to work. Instead, we're insisting that they put all of their money, same with us, into the stock market. Well, we want to start encouraging our youth to save their money so that they can buy a house. We're not talking about that. The other thing that we need to talk about is when it comes to rentals, we need to talk about tenant rights. That is not in our conversation. Landlords have rights, tenants do not. So we need to start talking about tenant rights. The other thing that we need to start talking about is the cost to rent. Let's not even talk about buying a house at this point. People can't even afford to rent a house. Up in Upper Dauphin County, I found out yesterday, a one-bedroom apartment can go for as much as $900 to $1,000, but there are no jobs up there that people can go to and make enough money to pay that rent, plus their utilities. So if we're going to talk about affordable housing, we have to start talking about wages, tenant rights, and making sure that there are jobs available for people in the area.
Isabelle and I might not agree on ICE, but we do agree on minimum wage. And let me just speak to this quickly, just from some statistical representation. People will tell you we're in an affordability crisis, and I'll tell you, yeah, we kind of are, but also if we pegged minimum wage to inflation from the 1960s, the minimum wage would be above $20 an hour. We might not be in as much of an affordability crisis if that were the case. If the minimum wage was $20 an hour, if you pegged it to productivity, it'd be over $25 an hour, what the actual worker produces compared to what they produced in the 60s. And so you're right, we need bold reform of minimum wage. We are not in a place where you can make a living off 2 minimum wages, 80 hours a week. So a few things. We have to ban private equity from being able to buy single-family homes. That's just an obvious thing that should be something we can work across the aisle to accomplish because it is not serving the American people. We also have to expand first-time homebuyer programs. In Dauphin County, we have a first-time homebuyer program that comes out of our affordable housing trust fund. When I got into office, it was $3,000 a month. I worked to get it up to $6,000, or not a month, $3,000 on your down payment. We got it up to $6,000 on your down payment and closing costs. The challenge is there's caps to that, meaning you only qualify if you make so much money, but it doesn't reflect the housing market now, right? Because the housing market is so outpaced the caps that basically you have to be dirt poor and you have to want to buy a house that's gonna have to be a fixer-upper because there's nothing on the market that exists. So we also have to raise the caps so that more people are eligible. We have to look at things like low-interest loan programs for first-time home buyers. We have to talk about how we're going to support first-time home buyers by not having to make that first payment that basically is just throwing money away, right? Like, these are things we have to do. And the one thing I will say is, my generation, it's easy to talk about how maybe we don't save money, but the truth of the matter is we haven't had money to save. Like, it's been challenging, like Karen was saying, to even have to put our groceries on a credit card instead of being able to pay cash for them, right? So this is the challenge. If we don't find a way to create more economic opportunity, Americans aren't going to have the money to save to be able to invest in a home. And then that economic freedom, that equity that's built over time that you're able to pass on to the next generation, you're not going to have it. My parents have that. I don't.
Okay, folks. Oh, we got one more. Thank you, Ruth. All right, everyone's still awake. We're doing good. You guys are doing great. This is the part of the evening where we will have audience questions. So my apologies if I can't kind of read this penmanship. Okay, here we go. Not my words. 3 minutes. 2 minutes. We'll do 1 minute. But they negotiated me down quick. That was... All right. 1 minute. All right. Okay, here we go. First one. No offense, but nobody here was selected by the major party machines. How has it been running against those, and what would you like to see changed in our elections to allow more competition and choice?
Okay, do I have an answer for that one? So, I did not go to the endorsement meetings of any of the Republican county committees. Putting aside the fact that it would be a lost cause, I just didn't think philosophically I could show up. I did send a letter to the county chairs, though, stating why I wasn't coming. And I did quote Ronald Reagan's from something he said in A Time for Choosing, in which he talked about it's not a matter of right versus left, it's up versus down. That if we don't recommit to this democracy, we'll lose everything. And what I saw was that the county Republican Party was lockstep in every county behind Donald Trump and Scott Perry, so I didn't go. What would I do differently? I think that the amount of signatures that you have to get on the ballot is too high. It's part of the incumbent protection plan. I had to get 1,000. I know you've got to get like 4,000. I talked to your husband about this at the No Kings rally. It is ridiculous. Now, if I was a rich woman, I would file a lawsuit alleging that those mechanisms, the signatures particularly, are violative of my First Amendment right to speak. I have a right to get on the ballot, and so I would change that.
You sure I can only have a minute? I'm the only independent up here. So let me tell you why. My whole purpose in running is to create a wedge. And it's to flip Congress upside down and to create a new way of representation in Congress. One that we have not been exposed to for years. As an independent, I am not beholden to a party. I answer to you. So you and I come up with the solutions. You and I come up with the issues that you want me to take to Congress. I wouldn't be going to Congress and sitting in my office and making phone calls to raise money. I'd be working for you, because I'm not going to have one party or the other on my back telling me what I need to do to make sure that they stay in power. This is a terrible, terrible experience in that respect. It's a fantastic experience because I get to meet all of you. It's a fantastic experience because I've been able to go up and down this district and see caring people, people who want change. The two-party system does not work for us.
Oh man, I'm the one who advocated for 60 seconds, and then you give me this question. So, if you're aware of my race, I'm running as a Democrat. The CCC has endorsed the other candidate that I'm running against, and the idea of Washington endorsing a candidate in a local race in primary is its own problem, in my opinion. But the problem also is what that endorsement represents. That endorsement represents fundraising lists, resources that are given to this candidate, and ultimately a coronation of sorts. And it's not a real primary. She doesn't have to compete. She's not here. She's refused to debate me. We've got a media inquiry last month for a debate with CBS 21. They gave us 3 dates to hold on the calendar, which is very challenging. I have a family calendar. I have 3 kids. 2 of them are in sports right now. I have a commissioner calendar. I'm not in any way, denying my duties as commissioner to run for this. And I also have a campaign calendar. So we held 3 dates. They never responded to CBS 21 for that request. And the reason that matters is because they don't want me and her side by side, because why give me any gasoline, right? Or why give me any opportunity? Why even acknowledge my existence? And the people who are making that possible is the Democratic Party. And they did the same thing to Bernie Sanders. After 2016, the emails leaked and it became clear that the DNC was elevating Hillary over him, and then literally the chair had to resign over that. And they're still doing that. And whenever you as a voter get your they have a preference over who you choose, and you get stripped of that right, it does not represent the democracy that the Democratic Party so needs to be championing right now.
Okay, second question. As AI is rapidly impacting our lives, what regulations and safety guidelines will you promote? Include job market impacts, data centers, data privacy.
Okay, so this is actually something I know somewhat about, and the person that helped me learn about this just left the room. All right, Diana, I'm flying solo. If you go to my website, votekd4c.com, you will see that I gave a policy address about a month and a half ago at the Capitol, talking about the legislation I would unveil if I'm given permission to represent you folks in Congress. AI. Data centers and AI go hand in hand. Data centers are merely delivery mechanism for AI. AI affects people's mental health, their jobs, their quality of life. Data centers, because they're delivering AI, the same thing, as well as the purity of the air and the water. So we're lucky that in Pennsylvania we have a wonderful constitution, and Article 1, Section 27 is our environmental rights amendment, which says that government holds the natural beauty of our environment as well as the air and the water in trust for us. And it's not just at the at the state level, it's at the local level too. Oh crap, I've got so much more to say. All right.
All right, could you repeat the question?
Sure can.
Please.
As AI is rapidly impacting our lives, what regulations and safety guidelines will you promote? Include job market impacts, data centers, and data privacy.
Okay, that's a loaded question, and I don't even think I can break it down, but let me just, unless it were in front of me, but I'm going to go with privacy to respond to this, and job creation and job loss that could be affected by AI. I do not think AI is bad. I think the implementation of it is what we have to pay attention to. I don't think that we are at a point where we are going to have a huge loss in jobs yet, even though there's a prediction that job loss because of AI can come as soon as 3 years from now. Because of that, we have to start looking for other ways for our youth in particular to move into the workforce. And one of the things that we're talking about is improving technical education at the high school level to move youth into paid positions once they leave high school. Another thing that we have to talk about is, I lost my train of thought. I'm going to go under a minute because I just completely lost my train of thought. AI is not bad. We just have to learn how to use it. We're already using it. If you're using ChatGPT, you're already using AI. And not only that, but your privacy has already been affected by using ChatGPT.
So to broaden this out, like AI and automation, we'll just talk about it that way, because AI is playing a big role in automation. It's going to really challenge a lot of jobs. The biggest industry it's probably going to impact first is going to be transportation industry, predominantly the semi-truck industry, those who have CDL license. This is a very it's an open lane for people to get into. Many people can become truck drivers. It doesn't require a college education, and you can make a pretty good living on it. Now, it's really hard in the sense that you're away from home a lot. But it is a way that many people in America make a living. It represents a good portion of our market of jobs. Once we have automated cars and trucks, which is coming, you can be as afraid of it as you want, you can be against it as much as you want, but it's coming. And when that comes, it's going to create, long international routes, but it's also going to create short routes that ultimately disenfranchise people with CDLs. That's going to be a massive change in industry. And what are we going to do to ensure that jobs that pay that well exist? Because that could be a good portion of our workforce that's going to be impacted by that. So we really need to be thinking ahead about workers' protections. Ensuring that people are not going to be replaced by this technology. I agree. I'm not anti-AI. I think there are useful tools for it, especially as someone who responds through email, and the ability to have something that helps me craft responses, or at least at the very least clean up my grammar, because I'm not going to sit there and spend 2 hours about an email, but when I can have someone help clean it up, that's helpful. But we need to know the costs.
All right, this is the last question. How can our grassroots mindset shift to earth-sustaining values? How can elected officials support this shift? You want me to read it? I'll read it just one more time. I'm not opposed to that. Ruth.
So I'm interested in knowing how elected officials can shift the culture. I mean, we actually hold the culture that generates values, and I just see. I mean, I'm just so different from what I see happening on the governance level. So I'm wondering, how you have similar values, all of you, to many of us here. And when you get among those, what is it, 200 plus representatives, I mean, how are you gonna be able to generate power? Are you thinking of the coalitions that you're going to join, and how can we out here bring sustenance and energy to the kind of change that is more reciprocal with the earth? It's like we've abused the earth. The whole thing that's running the government is take from the earth. And the earth is, it's suffering. We're going to suffer. We are, because of its wounds. So how can this change, dramatically for us to live?
That's a wonderful question. And I apologize for saying crap before. I wasn't. I know. I swear, I wasn't complaining. I wasn't casting any aspersions. They used to say at work that I got paid by the word. So the problem's mine. That's a great question. Most likely, I am not going to be the Republican nominee, so I'm going to have to turn that over to somebody else. Yes. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Well, then let's just say that you give me permission to represent you in Congress. The first problem I'm going to have is where I'm going to sit in the Republican caucus room. It's going to be good that Marjorie Taylor Greene won't be there, but Lauren Boebert will, and so will Trey Gowdy and a whole bunch of those other Republicans that are way out there. So in terms of making coalitions, I was going to have to be in partnership with the Democrats, and that was where I was going to start. As for my own personal integrity, I do not take PAC money. I don't believe that taking PAC money is a good idea. When I worked for Jim Greenwood in 1986, he took some PAC money depending upon what the issue was, but as a member of Congress, he never took any. So I'm following his example. I wish I had a better answer, and I hope that I can think about that and someday get you a better answer than what I'm trying to come up with on the spot. And I'm going to turn it over to the two people smarter than me that are here. Here you go.
Yay. Follow that. Oh, please. I'm like, you're so accomplished. I'm just pleased. So let me start with this. I am a steward of the earth. I have been a steward of the earth since I was 13. My brothers and sisters left, and I was responsible for my mother's property. I absolutely believe that we have a responsibility to heal Mother Earth. And if I can do that, as your representative in Congress, I will work my hardest to do that. In terms of coalitions, I will not, I'm telling you now, I'm not the only independent in the country running for Congress and the Senate. And I collaborate with them. And one of the things that we have all agreed to is that we will not join any type of oh my gosh, it's getting late. Caucus. Who said that? Thank you. Thank you. We will not join a caucus. And one of the reasons why is because as an independent going into Congress, it gives us leverage. Now, the leverage that we will have also depends on the makeup of the Congress. So that's a discussion that we need to have at another time. But it gives us the ability to bring your concerns directly to the conversation. Now, in terms of getting committee assignments, subcommittee assignments, or even getting on a working group as an independent, that's an uphill battle. And that's something that I'm willing to take on.
So just to be clear, the question is really about earth care, but how we will do that and shift the culture on care of the earth. So I just want to start here. I was a pastor for 20 years. I don't want to guess. We're in a church, but I don't want to guess the faiths that are represented here. As a commissioner, I've been very ecumenical. All faiths are welcome, and those of no faith are welcome in my office, and I want to serve everybody in my community, and I bring that lens to leadership in Congress as well. But I do want to say, as a Christian and as a former pastor, the scriptures have a lot to say about earth care. The scriptures have a lot to say about our mandate to care for the creation, for God's creation. And what's really frustrating is it's often Christians who are moving forward legislation that's going to increase pollution. And I think we need a call back to our conscience on this in America, a call back to the reality that God reveals himself in nature. That's not just a Christian principle. That's a principle in almost every religion, every major religion. And so as we abuse the earth, we, in a sense, are doing that to our Creator and to what He has created. And so that to me is something that I think is really important that we get back to. And I'm not trying to make this religious, but I'm just trying to say, as a former pastor, that's something that's important to me. I do want to say this though too. I grew up on a farm. I raised animals. We had hundreds of sheep. We had cows. We had, I began to see factory farming in my 30s. I was a vegetarian for 7 years because I saw factory farming. And as someone who grew up on a farm, would see an animal go to the slaughter and come back and be bacon on our table, right? But then to see just the lack of care for a living thing, it really challenged my conscience. And I think we need an awakening of conscience, and that's the culture that I plan to change.
All right, this concludes our event. Again, thank you to our candidates and our sponsors, and thank you to everyone in our audience for coming here tonight and for your interest in our democracy. We do this for you guys, and we truly do appreciate everyone that has come out. And thank you to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for moderating.
Oh, thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you so